I'd like to show you here some of the hows and whys of top water fishing, or any type of structure fishing. This is going to hold true for. You see an area here where I have an inflow from an overflow pipe into a canal. Now I have an isolated patch of wheat here, I have an isolated lily pad here, and then I have a bigger lily pad bed here with a nice point on it. You can see where it comes out to a point. Well, that is where I would expect bass or pike to be sitting to ambush prey. Now it's really hot today, it's really sunny today. It's 88 degrees, water temperature's probably pushing 70 degrees because this is pretty shallow water. So those fish are going to be laying underneath those lilies, but they're going to lay on the edge of the lilies to ambush prey. It's the same here. I wouldn't expect, sometimes they'll lay back right in the lily pads, you know, deep in the pads. But a lot of times if you get a feeding fish, he's going to sit right on that point, because that point is going to funnel bait fish to that area, and he knows that. And that's where he's going to sit to ambush prey. You can see further down here where I caught the bass a couple of minutes ago on the mouse. I've got more isolated pads here. You can see that, and that's what I caught that fish off of, was an isolated little lily bed pad like this. It's much harder to fish if you have a situation where you know, the whole bank is lily pad. That's a much harder situation. You have to pick your spots and try and pick points where the fish are going to sit. But if you have isolated pads like this and a bunch of clear water, that's a dynamite spot. That's a dynamite spot. That's a dynamite spot. Okay, here's a different situation here. You can see that underneath the water, it's matted with hydrilla. And soon enough, this is going to be, you know, it's going to be all topped out. It's only maybe a half a foot, 6 inches underneath the surface, and there's maybe 2 to 3 feet of water here. You can see on the opposite side, well, I got big lily pads here on this edge. I got grass on this edge, and then you got big dollar lily pads on this side. I catch a lot of fish out of those dollar lily pads. They're not as big. They don't have as much cover, but they still provide shade as they don't have as much, you know, shade cover as the bigger lily pads that are here. But the fish can see bait in those pads easier than they can in the thick pads. They also have a little more room to sit underneath, and it still provides shade. Now also, don't be afraid to fish topwater lures over hydrilla like this, because a lot of times the fish will just barely submerge himself within the hydrilla, and he'll sit and wait for bait fish to swim over the top of him. It's also good to look for holes in the hydrilla, like here. There's a little depression. The fish will sit, actually there's a bass right there, you can see one. The fish will sit in that area and wait to ambush bait fish. Alright, let's see if we can get this guy to take out a lure or not. Okay, there it is. First fish on the topwater Savage Gear Lily Ninja. Pretty decent bass. Got some hooking to let him go. And as you can see, hit that pretty hard. He pulled the hook all the way through it. It's kind of like the live target mouse, except it doesn't have the solid tail, it's got the stranded tail. Same double hook though. I lost one of their fish earlier on it. He struck it and just didn't get a good hook set on it, and he got off, but that one didn't get off. He engulfed it. Okay, there he is, back to original condition. Just reset the hook in it. See, it's weighted in the bottom. It's got a little hole here to evacuate the water for when it gets pulled under. It's pretty good swimming action on it. See, I have it here hooked to a trace because I do deal with pike and pickerel, so it's pretty lifelike. This is the larger size one. They do have a smaller size one. I've only found this available at Dick's Sporting Goods. Couldn't buy it anywhere else. I think it's only exclusively available at Dick's. This seems to work pretty well. It is cheaper than the Coper's live target mouse. This cost me $5 plus tax. Coper's is about $10 plus tax. Okay, this is what I was talking about with a funnel. I have pads at the back, pads on both sides, and then a clear channel in the center. That's going to be a prime ambush point for fish. Also, if you see here in the back where the lily beds are there's a clear spot between the bank and then the outer lily pads. That clear spot right in here, that would be a good ambush point for a fish. You see here in the closer pads, there's a spot right here where you have a clear area. And what I'd like to do with that is that I would cast past it I would drag the mouse or the frog or rat, whatever type of lure you're using, across the top of the lilies, and then I would wait on the edge of that, then jump it out into that, twitch it through. So I'd walk the dog, walk the dog, walk the dog, and then drag it back across the lilies. It's pretty ineffective to try and twitch the bait when it's on top of the lilies. But if you can cast it on the lilies, sometimes the fish will sit underneath it. And then if you just drag it and then you get to one little clear spot, he's going to wait till that bait goes in that little hole, and boom, he just comes up and grabs it. Also on this, I would like to fish this pocket where you have a clear spot, and then the edges of that. Those are also going to be good places to fish. Again, here, where my rod tip is here, right at the point of that lily pad, that will be a good spot. I don't know where you can see under the water here. The water's pretty clear. You go hydrilla. So that tends to, you know, mat the water up. But it also makes the water really clear. You can see here we're getting into much thicker, heavier lily pads. Really, the only way you're going to fish areas like that is with, you know, a topwater frog or a topwater mouse, something that's pretty weightless. Okay, here he goes. Cast to the back of the pocket. Keep your line high when you're in the pads, and then just drag it real slow. Twitch it a little bit, shake it. Then pause when you get to the edge of the pad into open water. Now we're going to walk the dog right along the edge of the lilies. Don't be afraid to work it in open water, because with the hydrilla, like I said, a lot of times the fish will be laying right in the hydrilla. There's a big bluegill I see. Fish to the edge. That tree line there, you can see where we've had really high water. We've had a lot of flash flooding. There was one night, I think last week it was, we had 4.5 inches of rain in 4 hours. Fish don't take kindly to those type of conditions. They need stable weather. Twitch it, twitch it, twitch it, twitch it. Now if I move it, and say I want to fish that lily pad bed there, right to the back of the pocket cast. This time I'm going to keep my rod high, and then I'm just going to drag it over the lilies. Now if there's a bass, usually pike won't sit right in the lilies, but they'll sit on the edge. But the bass can sit in the middle. Then pause when you get to the edge, and then swing the rat out from the edge, switching it. You have to experiment with your retrieve. Sometimes they want it fast, sometimes they want it slow. Right to the back of that pocket. Now I'm going to let it sit this time. Let the ring dissipate, and now we're going to start to work it. A lot of times you can tell if it's a pike coming for your lure because it will leave a wake. The pike will come up from the top. They don't usually come up from the bottom. They'll actually attack it from the side or behind. But a bass will come up from underneath it like a shark. Keep the line high. Switch it through the pads slowly. Move it through the pads slowly, because you got to give the fish a chance to not necessarily see it, but he's going to feel where that bait is at. Sometimes in the pads like that, they'll come up and explode on it. Get to the edge, pause, because I think that's more natural. Something that's going to make a run for its life. It's not going to just immediately jump out into the water. It's going to check its surroundings first and then go. Okay, here's a much more difficult scenario. You have a gigantic bed of, bed of lily pads here. The only type of structure you could I mean, bar you fish, just randomly fish along it, I would still want to fish points. So we have points of pads coming out, or pockets like here where you have a little indentation in the pad. Here, a little indentation in the pad. The fish, especially when it's hot like today, they will sit right way up in the back of that, under the tree line, sitting out under the pads, because under that water is much cooler than water out here because the sun is heating it up. Well, that water isn't getting any sun because of the lily pads. So it provides shade, and it provides, temperature relief too for the fish. You can see here at the end, fishing past bushes like this too is always good. You see the way there's a little bit of weed on the end of the bush here, on just under the bush. The bush is going to provide shade and the weed is going to provide cover. Actually, you can see a bluegill sitting right there. Here's another good area to fish then too, that channel. We have lily pad bed on this side, lily pad bed on this side. But it's much tougher to fish this. If I had my choice to fish this, of course I'm fishing from the bank today, but if I was fishing from a kayak or fishing from my boat, I'd sit along that weed edge and cast diagonally along it and then retrieve this way, along that weed edge. That's going to keep my bait in the strike zone of the fish much longer. It also helps me move along that weed bed and cover more water more quickly, rather than casting this way and diagonally dragging my bait across it this way. That's what I would do with that. You can see here we got spotty weed. I've got some clear water, so I don't want to fish the edge of that lily pads there. Alright, let's see, keep going, what else we can find. And this is why we use the wire trace. Little chain pickerel here, beauty. Took the mouse, as you can see. Just barely got him, man. He hit it just on that open water as the weeds ended. Now you get that little patch of weed there. He came right up and hammered it. Nice little fish. We're going to unhook him and let him go. Could get one of those at 10 pounds. That's a load of fun. Okay, back goes Mr. Esock. Away he goes. Okay, take that fish right here. That's where he was. He was just sitting underneath that little mat. I was bringing it back up, and you can see I have a lot of open water here. Made a real long cast to the opposite bank almost, just underneath the bush. Brought it through the lily pads. Paused it, like I said, when I got to open water. That gave him a chance to see that. And then as I brought it out, boom, he came up and whacked it. Alright, let's see if we can find anything else. One tip I will give you, that when you're purchasing topwater baits, weedless baits especially, like this mouse or a rat or anything like that, or a frog, make sure the bait is soft. The softer the bait, the easier it crushes, the easier hookup you're going to get. You also want to make sure that the hooks ride alongside the bait, so it's pretty weedless. The softness of the lure is important though. Also, where the hooks are positioned is important. You can see here too with the Cooper's topwater bluegill. You see where the hooks are positioned on it? They're lined right with the body, but the body's like super soft, super compressible to get the nice hookup on it. Same with the frog here. I have a medium-sized frog, Cooper's live target frog. And it's real soft. It takes no effort to crush that bait down, and that's what's going to get your hookup. You're never going to get 100% hookup on top water. It's pretty tough. You have to fish it a lot, and you have to get used to it. But you want to watch your strike time and make sure you feel the weight of the fish before you strike. Sometimes if people have a tendency to react to the blow up, and then you yank the bait, and it pulls the bait right out of the fish's mouth. It depends on where you are. Sometimes they have it immediately, and he spit that bait out before you even realized and had a chance to react to it. So sometimes you got to strike right away. Other times he'll have it in his mouth and he'll be swimming away with it. Once he grabs it, he'll be swimming away with it, and then you can nail him. But man, I love topwater fishing. It's great fun. I had to show you my gear here. Of course, I'm using the rat. I have a 25-pound wire trace. I have 30-pound braid. direct to my reel. The braid floats on the water, so it's going to stay on the top of the water. Much easier for me to use it. This is a Quantum Escalade HD reel in 7:3:1. I also use it in 7:6:1, and I have a slower one in 5:6:1 for bigger baits. So it's a pretty fast retrieve. It lets you work the lure pretty quickly, especially good for when it's hot, when the water is hot. This is an Accurist Quantum rod. It's carbon fiber. It's only 6 foot, it's pretty short, but I'm not fishing real big water with it today. The braid is important though for hookup. You gotta have immediate contact with your bait. Mono is not real good for top water, and if you're gonna use a mono leader, it might give you a shock leader for bigger fish and heavy weed. If you're gonna be fishing really thick weed and you have the possibility of catching a big fish, you want to run 50 to 60 pound braid. The braid will also cut weed. It will cut right through the weed like a wire. So if you have fish in deep grass or big lily pads, that braid, when he pulls the lure under the weed and turns sideways, that braid will cut that weed right out of the way, and you'll be able to drag the fish back to the boat. We caught a couple of fish today, just a fun outing. I hope some of the tips I gave you were helpful, and we'll see you in the next video.